There we go. Good afternoon, everybody. How is everybody this afternoon? Good, good, wonderful, wonderful. Nice to see attendance is still half decent. You know, this late into the semester. I know exams are creeping in upon us with the thrumming regularity of a internal combustion engine, but you know, we still have a little bit of time before exams. We should you know, do some of the course. Don't you think? Yeah? All right. So, we're going to continue talking about PHP, the language, this week. If we have time, we will get into some details about how the language is actually useful and what you actually use it for. But we are still in the world of sort of syntax and stuff, at least for the time being. So, let us discuss control structures. Control structures in PHP work pretty much as you would expect them to from other languages. Moving on. No, we have to talk about it a little bit more than that. So, you will not find there to be too many differences between PHP and Java or Python in this. Well, Python's control structures are a little bit weird. Did you know that Python has a while else? Did you guys know that? That's a true fact. Python has while else. Absolute bonkers. But anyway, so this note is one that is important. Once again, PHP is a weakly dynamically typed language. In order to distinguish a true-false Boolean literal from integer values, you require strict equality comparison. Strict using the 3 equal signs. So 0 will equate to false under weak equality. This is often not what you want. Okay? And does anybody remember from last class, how does true print as a string? 1. How does false print as a string? 0. Empty string. Yes, the null character. Yay! So, let us talk about Boolean operators. You know how in Python you wrote the word and? In Java you had the double ampersands? Probably the first time in your life that you were required to draw an ampersand was on the Java test, right? Well, PHP supports both. And even more frustratingly, they have slightly different meanings. So, my recommendation is to use the Java ampersand. Some of you were with me in JavaScript where I said one of the best heuristics that you can use is anytime you're programming in any language, pretend it's Java. Try to make your code look as Java-like as possible, and this will get you out of a lot of tough scrapes. So, and is a low priority operator. Double ampersand is a high priority operator, right? So basically the difference between the two is operator precedence. Have you run across the concept of operator precedence before? Maybe? You have. How about the rest of you? Anybody have any idea? Like, you can probably piece together a little bit of what I mean by this, right? So, operator precedence then, yeah?
Is it kind of like in CSS styling, where you might have something set as importance, and that makes it higher priority than like, specifically referring to the paragraph?
A little bit, but it kind of, it's a bit more bedmassy, if that makes sense. So, here's a question for you. If I write the following expression, what is the answer? 4.5. Because division as an operator has higher precedence than addition as an operator. It is therefore executed first. That gets executed to 0.5. 4 plus 0.5 is 4.5. The expression is thus simplified, right? If we wish to control the manner in which these expressions are evaluated, we can do so by means of round braces. This is also true inside of programming code. So the question then becomes, pardon me, oh goodness me, why on earth would it be necessary to have a high and a low precedence AND operation? Well, what's interesting is its interaction with other operations. So, I'm just gonna pull up a quick online PHP interpreter. Sure. I think I've used this one before. All right. So that's really small though. Can I blow that up? Oh man, that blows up the app. Okay, fine. I'll just use the thing. All right, fine. We're gonna do it the proper way. Ugh. I hate the internet. So, please get your Apache server up and operational. Pull up your code editor of choice. There we go. Oh yeah, you guys remember me saying that stuff that you put into htdocs is persistent and viewable by other users? There's our code from last week. Delete when you're finished, please. There we go. We shall call this tests.php. There we go. Just throw a little hello in there just to make sure that everything's working. I highly, highly recommend anytime you start up a PHP script or do anything networky whatsoever, doesn't matter how many times you've done it before, just see if you can send a hello world over before you go any further, because that will allow you to diagnose any connection issues that you may have before your mind is focused on the actual problem you're trying to solve. Right? Separate your concerns. Alright? So, localhost 1080. There we go. The folder I want, 2025-09-15. There we go, tests.php. And there we go. Very good. So, the question that we are meant to be answering for ourselves, what on earth is the point in having and double ampersand, or and double bar, vertical bar? Let's set ourselves up a little if statement. Or maybe, yeah, we'll have to do this. Don't forget the semicolons. Now, interesting facts. Six and 3 is true. Why is 6 and 3 true?
Because you're not comparing them, it's just number and number, so it's true and true.
They are both not zero.
They are both not 0. Yes, you see. For, if I replace one of these with a 0, I get false. So basically, all non-zero values are interpreted as true, and any 0 value is interpreted as false. This will include null. Right? So, alright, so very well. What about and? Okay, fine. How about something like that? Let me just put a break in here. There we go. So, six and 3, but this is an assignment statement. X is being assigned 6. Therefore, when we ask for it, it has the value 6. Hopefully something changes when I do this. Yeah! I'm right. Haha. So that's the difference. It doesn't really matter that and the double ampersand notation are like binding more or less tightly with respect to each other. What's interesting is what falls between those levels of priority, right? And it turns out that our humble friend, the assignment statement, falls between those levels of priority. So, double ampersand binds 6 and 3 together, and that is calculated first. What is 6 and 3? True. Right. It's true, a Boolean true. We are assigning Boolean true to X. Therefore, the expression is true. But also, when we echo it, we get true, which is actually 1. PHP. Any questions?
Don't ask them why it wasn't 9, how did you do 1?
Yes. Well, it's not 9 because it's not
It's not
addition.
plus, yeah.
Yeah. But yes, so that's why PHP has, like, unfortunately, somehow it wormed its way into the culture in PHP that this is a perfectly fine way to assign to something. I don't recommend ever performing assignment inside of an if statement guard in any language, even if that is culturally acceptable inside of that language, right? The culture of PHP is wrong. But it does kind of run you into a lot of interesting little edge cases. So, any questions about this? All right. So, now let's talk about a nice little feature called short circuit evaluation. Short circuit evaluation. So, let's start by let's consider. I use that board. For the benefit of people on this side of the room, I'll use this one now. And for the benefit of nobody who's watching it on the camera, because unless somebody's actually spinning the camera, nobody can see what I'm doing on the board. That's okay. That's why you should come to class. So, let's consider the following. Oh, and by the way, the conclusion, which I hope everybody reaches about the previous example, is just use double ampersand. It behaves the way that you expect it to. Forget that, understand that you can write it in the Python way, but that does subtle things to mess you up, so just avoid, right? Just avoid. A lot of what we're talking about is cursed code that you shouldn't use, okay? PHP has cursed and operators. So let's go here, all right? Let's consider the following. Let's say that A, B, and C are other expressions resulting in Booleans, all right? So let's draw up a little truth table. Right? True, 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 false, 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 true, true, false, false, true, true, false, false, true, false, true, false, true, false, true, false. You didn't know that truth tables had a song, did you? So, you guys have seen a truth table before, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I should certainly hope so. All right. So,
1, 0.
consider, all right, let's consider what the output is here, right? What is the output? Which of these cases is true? Only the first one, right? True, false, 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 false. Do I have too many falses? No, I'm good. Okay. got a little, yeah, that's okay. So, examining this first column, we can make a certain amount of decisions. We can make one decision about what the output's going to be, even from the state of the first column, without considering the second two. What is that?
If anything is false, it's going to be false at the end.
Right. If anything for expression A is false, your outcome is going to be false no matter what B and C are. Right? If it's true, we don't know whether it's going to be true or false. So we have to keep calculating. We then examine the remaining portion of B. The same rule applies. If B is false, then the output is certainly going to be false. If B is true, we must continue the calculation. So, given that these concatenated chains can be quite long in some cases, a thing that the kernel does, right? This isn't implemented at the level of the CPU. This is implemented at the level of the kernel, right? A thing that the kernel does when it encounters, or I guess you could say the compiler as well, when it encounters a condition such as A that is concatenated using and that is false, it doesn't calculate the rest. It stops and it says, this whole condition must logically be false. Therefore, I do not need to calculate B or C. Effectively saving itself some calculations. Right? Does this make sense? So this is called short circuit evaluation. As is often the case in low-level programming languages and the type of people who enjoy them and use them, this, which is essentially a little optimization trick to try to reduce the number of calculations it takes to perform an if statement, right? This little calculation trick is now sort of considered to be the public property of people who enjoy writing cursed programming code, right? So much of these like really obscure little tricks in programming are taking advantage of something like that, some kind of optimization that's happening. So let me show you in PHP how it is that people use that, right? So consider the following. What sort of error does that generate?
Divide by 0.
Yes. This is a div 0 error. Let's see how PHP behaves with it. Warning, division by 0. It gives you a value of inf, which is probably not useful to your purposes. JavaScript does something as well, but hopefully everybody remembers me saying last time that warning was just dropped into the HTML code of the output page. That is unacceptable from a user interaction standpoint. You cannot have PHP error messages or warning messages just randomly sprinkled throughout your website, right? So this is bad. This is bad. We need to fix. But just for the sake of argument, let's extract that as a variable, right? Make sense? Same result. So, if we wanted to protect this from zero division error, we would do something like this. If y is not equal to 0, do the thing. Else, echo, whoops, nearly divided by 0 there. Right? Making sense so far? Just throw another one of these breaks in. There we go. So we are detecting it as a narrow escape from a zero division error in one case, but if we modify y so that that is not the case, we get the result. Okay. But here's the problem. What if this is part of the condition for something else? Right? What if we're not just simply echoing it? What if it's something like this? Right? Now, when you nest if statements in this manner, you have effectively joined them up with a conjunction. So with and, logical and. By the way, logical and is called conjunction, and logical or is called disjunction. So when you have conjunctive normal form, that means that and is like the most. It's and separated by ors, and then disjunctive is ors separated by ands. It doesn't matter. Conjunction, anyway. So when you set these two up like this phrase can essentially be, this can be rewritten in the following way, because it's logically equivalent. There you go. So this works, but only because of short-circuit evaluation. If I swap the positions of the two expressions relative to each other, suddenly it won't work anymore. Because it first seeks to evaluate this term, causing the zero division, and then it's trying, and only then does it attempt to check the condition that's supposed to prevent this from executing. But when we have it in the reverse position, everything works fine. Y is checked to see if it is 0. If that comes out false, this term is never executed and therefore never trips an error. Does this make sense? You will see this. Short-circuit evaluation, I'm not just telling you this because I enjoy the sound of my own voice, although that is also true. Otherwise I would not be a professor. So this is an actual thing that you will actually see in PHP code. This is like the way things are programmed in PHP. One example has to do with checking to see if something exists before reading from it, right? So let's say, just for the sake of interest, I have an array array at monkeys equals potato, right? If array at baboons is equal to, or is greater than 10, array at baboons plus equals 5. Right? Something like this. Will this code run as written? Important question. You should be able to you should be able to read this code and understand that it does or does not run. How many people think this will run? How many people think it won't? Good! So, why? Yes, baboons is not declared, monkeys is declared. Baboons and monkeys are different things, particularly if you're talking about string values. There you go. Undefined index. The isSet function allows you to check to see if an associative array, or mainly associative arrays, but we'll see a couple of other cases, but mostly it's like this in JSON, but JSON also parses into associative arrays. It checks to see if baboons is actually set in array. If it's not, it returns false. If it returns false, short circuit evaluation means that this is never executed, this is never read. Therefore, the error which previously occurred does not occur. Right? So we are testing the validity of the operation as the first expression, and we are executing the operation in the second expression. This is kind of a neat little compact way to do things. If this is kind of like if this is making your neurons boil, then I definitely recommend not using short circuit evaluation. It does not have to be used, so don't use it if you don't have to. If you can't wrap your head around it, just don't use it. But just to understand, if you're reading PHP code, which many of you will be doing, if you end up working with PHP code at all, you will likely be reading legacy code. That's what junior programmers do. You're likely to run into situations precisely like that, because once again, this is culturally acceptable in PHP. Does that make sense? Very good. Any questions? Okay. Let's see, let's keep going. Oh, here's one for you. So you know that thing I did with assignment inside of the if condition? That also just works as a line of code, not inside of a condition at all. So, yeah. So just don't use that. Use that, don't use that. Okay? Sound good? That also works here. So it's kind of interesting, right? Interpreted languages kind of have this thing where like just an expression can just be hanging out on a line of code and it just executes the expression, but it doesn't necessarily modify memory, right? I'm pretty sure this is the sort of thing that like Java doesn't let you do, but like in PHP, if I make the first line of this just like 2 plus 2, right? Come on, here we go. Like it does it, right? It doesn't produce any output. It doesn't do anything. But, you know, if you think of like the JavaScript analogy of like just entering 2 plus 2 into the console and pressing enter, that's kind of like what I've just done in PHP here, right? This is possible, but it doesn't really do anything, right? Now, this means that like a line of code which is terminated by a semicolon can be an arbitrary expression. Whether that expression has any effect on memory or not, that is basically telling you whether the expression has been useful, right? Has it done anything? Expressions don't have to do anything. Expressions do not have to contain assignment statements, or assignment expressions, right? And that's kind of like, that's one of the main things to understand about PHP and assignment, is that the assignment operator is, it should be correctly considered at the level of an expression rather than at the level of a statement, right? Any of this making sense? Okay. Again, just program as nearly as you can to Java, and don't worry about this kind of like cursed PHP stuff as far as you can, and yeah, you'll do okay. But just understand that like PHP is one of the languages, one of those like, okay, you can tell something about like the community around the language from like the way the language is used, right, and how the language is developed. PHP was clearly developed by smart Alecs, who like to be smarter than other people, right? And that's why they have all of this kind of stuff that they actually use. It's like, oh, if you don't understand short-circuit evaluation, what are you even doing in this language? Go program in Scala. It's like, not useful, PHP. It's one of the reasons everybody hates you and your language is dying. So, I don't know, let me get a feel from the crowd. If I were to like go over if statements for you guys, you'd probably like think that was a monumental waste of time, right? You guys, everybody knows how to put an if statement together? Alright. Well, I will give you one thing though, alright? In Python, if, elif, else, right? Not elf, elif. In JavaScript, if, else, if, else. Anybody care to guess what PHP is? Anybody know this already? Don't look ahead in the notes. Did you look ahead in the notes?
Yeah, I did.
You want to say it anyway?
Else if without a space.
Else if without a space. Look at this. Now, once again, if you program it like it's Java, everything works. You can still do this. It works. Right? So why do you even... Basically, this is probably how the language was originally designed, and then everybody who came in and was like, PHP people, what the heck is with this ELSIF? Or ELSAFE, if you will. Why not just, like, can you please just do that? Can you please just do that, please? And they were like, normies, fine. And they did it. Another thing that you, like, another interesting thing about if statements is, like, if you kind of, like, draw a line right there, right? This is a complete if-else expression, right? So, like, you could just, like you could imagine, like, a curly brace there and a curly brace there that have been removed, right? So, like, you kind of can stack these things anyways. It doesn't matter. Why PHP? Why? They probably have a reason, but, you know. Anyway, that's as much as I have to say about if statements. So, PHP, most languages do this actually, unless they have a reason not to, like Python. But you're allowed to leave out the curly braces if the thing inside the curly braces is only one line. You can also put that on the same line. It's, you know, it allows you to come up with compact ways of saying things which are only slightly annoying to novice programmers. You can say stuff like, if x is equal to 5x plus plus, or stuff like that, right? If the lines are nice and short and compact, you can do stuff like that, and it's fine, right? If the lines start getting long, like, despite the fact that this one is only one line inside these curly braces, this condition is sufficiently long that I wouldn't one line that, you know? That being said, you know, you can also just choose to leave out these braces, and it compiles, but, like, why? Just do it consistently. Consistency! Just be consistent. If there's one thing that you should all do, it's just be consistent, all right? I don't care if you code badly. If you code consistently, that's better than coding inconsistently and well, for maintainability, etc. Because, you know, a bad coder can be made to improve, but, you know, a smart aleck coder who's brilliant but just finds every opportunity to, like, you know, say, yeah, man, you didn't know that. You didn't know you could do that, right? It's like, go away. Go back to elementary school where that sort of schoolyard shenanigans belongs. Okay. Ternary expressions. Now, I occasionally teach ternary expressions in JavaScript. Did I teach ternary expressions to you guys? Some of you, yes. Everybody who's seen ternary, everyone who has not. That's enough people to definitely be worth going over ternary expressions. So, ternary expressions operate very similarly to if statements, but they are expressions and not statements. To understand the difference between ternary and an if statement, you need to understand broadly the difference between an expression and a statement, which I believe is something we talked about in this class. Yes? No? Did we not? Quick refresher? Quick refresher? Okay. So, in very rough terms, a statement is a line of code, roughly speaking, especially roughly speaking in PHP, given that I just demonstrated you can do 2 + 2 as a line of code. But basically, there are some expressions which, there are some like grammatical constructs which are kind of like, they're like the outer layer of the programming code. And then you've got inner expressions which are kind of where you do a lot of like the nuts and boltsy kind of work. The analogy in algebra, everybody remembers algebra? Everybody remembers algebra? On the subject of algebra, like I have been thinking about these sorts of things for many years, and I think that like the #1 prerequisite skill, perhaps not in terms of like the subject matter itself, but in terms of like the mental operations which are required to do it, algebra exactly prefigures programming, which is why I think it's absolutely silly to take I think it's absolutely silly to take like, not 3-year-olds, but like 3rd graders and put them in front of Scratch and say, okay, go program. And think, oh, we're teaching people to code in elementary school. It's like, no. You probably can't handle coding like before the middle of high school, probably, you know, which is when a lot of people, that's actually when I started coding. So, you know, I might be a little biased. But, yeah, like, you know, they do algebra in like grade 6, I think they start algebra, so, you know, but you really should should come to grips with algebra before you start doing this kind of stuff, so. But anyway, algebra. If I were to write this, what is that? That is an expression. If I were to write this, what is that? That is an equation, right? You know that it is an equation because it has an equals sign, right? So this is a statement. This is an expression. You'll notice that the statement contains expressions, right? When we take something like this and we break it down in a compiler, we produce a thing called an abstract syntax tree, something that would look something like this. And that would be calculated. Essentially, something like this, you know, let's make it PHP, why not? Right? So, you would take it in terms of its topmost expressions and express the tree downwards. So the top level expression here, the one that's performed last, is addition, right? Addition requires y and the result of multiplication between 3 and the result of subtraction between 4 and x, the way the compiler is trained to write the machine code to perform the operation is to go all the way down the tree to its up to, you know, a node containing only leaves, right? Depth first search, if you will. Calculate that, pass that expression up to the next level. Calculate that, pass that expression up to the next level, and that's how it calculates it. But is that a statement or an expression? That's an expression. So generally, like, although this is like, again, one of the reasons I hate PHP and all of its nonsense dynamic languages is because they blur this line. But generally speaking, when you are performing calculations of this nature, it's not a bad heuristic to say that is an expression. Anytime you are modifying memory, that should be thought of as a statement. So, if I'm writing a value into a variable, that's a statement. If I have an if statement, right? You might be thinking, oh, but it's not like if statements write variables, so that's not writing a variable. But ha-ha, you would be wrong. You see, every program has a special hidden variable called the program pointer. That variable tells you what line you are on in the program. So, when you are using if statements, you are actually modifying the state of a variable. You're modifying the state of the program pointer. You are telling the program to go to a different part of the program. That is modifying memory, right? So, if statements, while loops, switch cases are where it's most obvious and close to the surface, because a switch statement is really just a sort of a tamed zoo animal version of gotos. It even uses goto syntax to an extent. That's what the colon, case value colon, that's actually goto syntax. So in that case, it comes closest to the surface. But again, that's just modification of the program pointer. That is modifying a value in memory. Therefore, statement. If I'm modifying memory, statement. Okay? So, coming back to ternary, right? With an if statement, you are jumping around the program. It is a, it is a directional command. Ternary statements, or ternary expressions, can I say that with enough expression? Ternary expressions do not modify the program pointer. You're not jumping around in code. They do, however, allow you to select between two values based on a condition. The condition that you write can be written the exact same as the condition inside of an if statement. But ultimately what you're playing for is substitution of the ternary with an expression, with a value of a calculated expression. You're not modifying the position that you are in the program. So, for example, if a monkey is equal to an ape, echo yes. Else, echo no. I'm sure we've all been there. Some kind of if statement like this. This can be recoded in the following manner. Question mark? Does this make sense? Yes.
I'm missing a question.
What did I do?
On the no? You haven't got the.
Oh, good read. Thank you. No. Monkeys are not apes. So this also works when you assign to the same variable different values depending on how that guard comes about, right? You can take something like that and you can re-encode that like this. Make sense? generally only for like making code more compact in this form. However, honestly, you'll probably see more use of it in JavaScript because, or like, how many of you use lambdas? A few of you use lambdas. So when you use a lambda, a ternary expression can be used in that lambda if it's a lambda expression, like strictly a lambda expression, right? Where you can sneak one of these in somewhere an if statement wouldn't be allowed because you're not allowed to use statements, basically. But other than that, basically once again, the uses of the ternary operator are primarily for you to make yourself look clever. Okay? Any questions? Right. While we're here, should probably talk about another one. It's not in the notes, so this is like bonus material, I guess. So you'd think that this is like a new feature, and therefore it wouldn't like, oh, we don't have the most recent version of PHP, so we don't have this, but like this was a new feature like quite some time ago. So, so this is an operation which is called nullish or just null coalescing operator. Double question mark has been added as syntactic sugar for the common case of needing to use a ternary in conjunction with is set. It returns its first operand if it exists and is not null. Otherwise, it returns its second operand. So it's just kind of a little bit of a null check. If this thing exists and it doesn't, like, it's kind of funny. In some languages, if this exists and is this null, that is the same question. But in PHP, those are different questions, right? Does this exist? Is this null? Those are two different questions, right? So in this example, right, they're extracting the user get parameter from the user, or from the HTTP packet, and assigning nobody if it doesn't exist, or substituting the string nobody if this either wasn't provided or is null. Now, unfortunately, this is what it's syntactic sugar for. Unfortunately, we're still going to have to do things the way that it says in the notes because there's a case this doesn't cover. This is one that you should be aware of as well. JavaScript has this thing as well. Make sense? Perhaps not. Does this make a trifling amount of sense? Question?
So the version of PHP that we're working with doesn't have the ability to do this?
It does.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it does. Most of the things that people get caught on assignments are like array operations that don't exist in version 7. Okay. Here's another fun one. Spaceship operator. Ooh. So basically, what the spaceship operator does is like it allows it's like It's a little bit like what it looks like. It's like a greater than and a less than built together. You know?
What's the difference between them?
Well, it doesn't calculate the difference, I don't think. We can test it out. Just like,
Well, not the difference, the distance between them.
I know, yeah.
I don't think so. Otherwise, it would be the same as subtraction. So let's just,
It looks like there's some sharp here.
so for example, 10 spaceship 100. -1. 1000 spaceship 100 is 1. So basically it just returns, it returns 1 or -1, depending on like whether this is greater than that or that is greater than this, and if they're equal it returns 0. So it is a little bit like a comparator. If you actually use it as a comparator, it essentially equates to just equals, because, well, it's actually like not equals, right? Because it returns 0 when these things are the same, but 0 gets interpreted as false, right? So if you just take it that way, sure. What you're supposed to use it for is to then further say greater than 0, greater than or equal to 0, less than 0, right? You're supposed to take that and run a further comparison on it. I'm not sure I see the advantage versus like just using like greater than or less than, but hey, spaceship operator.
Dare I ask why it's called a spaceship operator?
Probably because people think it looks like a spaceship.
And,
Okay?
do we also have to be careful about the shortcut evaluations using this operator as well? Like if we did the
Just about gave me a heart attack there. Ooh. Probably. Yeah, don't, like, I have discussed many of these things in isolation. You'll have to figure out how they interact with each other on the exam. That's how this course works. That was sarcasm. I'm not gonna put spaceship operator on the exam. The only reason I wouldn't though, because actually it's kind of fun. The only reason I wouldn't is because like it's not in the notes, so the other professors probably didn't cover it, right? Because why would they, right? It's like, yeah. Anyway, where were we? Yes. Alright, fine. Switch statements. You guys have done switch statements, I assume, right? Okay. Okay, okay, whoa, okay. Alright. Switch statements in general operate the way that you expect them to. But there's an implicit operation here which requires exposing. If target is equal to 1, do this case. Somebody got it.
Oh, I know.
That's right. That's right, cats and kittens.
no quotation?
Guess what kind of equality that is?
Weak equality.
That's weak equality. And that's baked right the frig in.
Pain.
If you want strong equality in a switch case, you gotta do if statements. Now, you know, like I've said you should like lean on strong equality whenever possible. In practice, it's like you can get away with weak equality in most cases, basically because normally, when you're programming and you are the, like, when you are the programmer, it's like, you know, most people can manage, like, data type agreement, you know? It's kind of like when you're speaking in, or writing in English or any other language, it's like, you know, it's like verb, noun, plurality agreement is something most people can manage, right? It's kind of like that. It's like it's relying on you to do your own data type work without, you know, but it means that you're in unsafe territory and that problems can happen. But yeah, that's weak equality. So, any questions? How many people hate this language? On a scale from 1 to 10, how badly do you hate the language? There we go. Baby, you just ain't seen nothing yet.
But I don't hate it either.
So,
Maybe because you don't want to translate very well. Yeah, you put up the user or something like
What is
that.
that?
You
It's
want
definitely my
to
least
put
favorite,
like one
consider we're only
string
on
or
week
something
3
like
now,
that.
very quickly.
I don't know.
well, you know what the
I just
frustrating
give
thing
it up.
is like we're on week 3 and we still haven't learned how to actually take input. Like we haven't even gotten as far as taking input. You know?
It doesn't mind the problem
Which-
you have like true. Like this is one because it's first.
Anyway,
How do you take input in
what's this? Making the point of? It's fine. Okay. Here's your old friend the for loop. Still one of your most faithful and reliable allies in your quest to, you know, in your quest for code. This is still one of your, you know, this is one of your old faithful friends. The only difference that you have for the for loop classic here, just like everywhere else, you are not required to declare a data type. And unlike in JavaScript, you are also not required to use any keyword to let PHP know you're using a new variable. There's no let, there's no var, there's no const. It'd be kind of funny to use const in this context. But yeah, no, it's just, just declare it, right? Yeah, constant loop variable, there we go. So, while loops, hopefully everybody knows what a while loop is. I will say one thing on the subject of while loops. How many, okay, no judgment, all right? How many people like often use true as their while loop guard and then use break statements to break the loop? Yeah. Again, no judgment. Yeah, a few people. It is a habit that you should try to break. There are situations where that is exactly what you want, but most of the time you could reformulate the loop in such a way that you're not, you know, intentionally creating an infinite loop. But like, for example, in microcontrollers, you'll often wrap everything in an infinite while loop. Yes?
Would it be better to do like while program runner equals true and then have somewhere in there that sets it to false when you want to close, or is that pretty much the same as closing the break statement, as in you don't want to do that?
No, that's fine. I mean, it's better. It's better. See, the problem with the break statement is, you know, a disciplined user of the break statement will have one, right? an undisciplined user of the break statement will have several. And you're basically like running yourself back into spaghetti code, right? Like overuse of breaks and continues inside of loops. Basically the reason for this heuristic that you're not supposed to use them is like because they are go-tos. They are go-tos of a form, right? And we try to avoid go-tos as much as possible. So that's the actual reason. But let's just say I consider it a venial rather than a mortal sin. So do while loops. Ha! You forgot these existed, didn't you? No? Okay. I don't actually have anything to say about them. So for each loops though, for each, I think I already showed you guys a for each loop though, didn't I? I believe I did. So in Python, annoyingly enough, the for each loop is the for loop, and there is no regular for loop in Python, it's just a while loop. In Java, for int x colon list, for integer x in list, right? In JavaScript, well, this is actually inaccurate. They have actually added like proper for loop syntax. You're not required to use the for each method anymore. So this is being a little bit mean to JavaScript. JavaScript is it's a little better these days. Hey?
JavaScript deserves it though.
I mean, it's been improving though. God bless them. You know, like
JavaScript is trying its best.
they really are. But like the problem with JavaScript is like it's kind of like it was originally developed because like people wanted like a light front-end scripting language, and now like 80% of all development takes place in it, and it's like this is so far beyond like what the thing was originally designed to do. Like, oh man, I can't get sidetracked on that right now. If you want a slide on that, there's a slide on that in a lecture, in a slide deck that I've written for the rewrite for this course that I can't show it, but, well, I could probably show you, but, you know, maybe when we have time. Anyway, man, some of the stuff they've done with, like, the V8 Chrome JavaScript compiler is, like, that's incredible stuff. Like, did you know, for example, that it's not an interpreter anymore, strictly defined? The JavaScript interpreter is not an interpreter in the Chrome V8 JavaScript engine, which, by the way, is the state-of-the-art one. It is a just-in-time compiler. So it is actually a compiler, but it's a just-in-time compiler. So, like, you know, all of the speed benefits of compilation, you know, all of the dynamicism of interpretation. Anyway. So this is what a for each looks like in PHP. For each list as item. So this is one of the few points that I agree with PHP on. Calling a for each loop makes sense. It should be called what it is. I'm the kind of guy who likes to call things what they are, and that's a for each loop. You will notice, however, somewhat annoyingly, the position of the thing you're iterating over and the individual items is exchanged with respect to Java. So they are in the opposite positions. I can never personally remember which one goes where. You'll just have to try it, and you know, if it works, great, and if it doesn't, fix it, recompile. You guys should be used to that loop by now, eh? All right. All of these structures can be manipulated by break and continue. Any questions about control structures? All right. Do you feel like you're in control of control structures? I was trying really hard to make that interesting. All right. Modularity. Modularity is one of the most important things you know how to do in programming languages. It's extremely important. It is of extreme importance. Basically, the thing that controls how complex a piece of software can get is how big can it get before nobody can work on it anymore, right? How complex can it get before no human being is capable of doing any useful work on that project? That is the question. This is a real limit. Modularity is one of the ways that we reduce the complexity of the program so that it can be managed, right? Division of labor, separation of concerns. So, PHP, it sort of heralds from an older age in web programming. The way that PHP likes to think of itself, it doesn't even necessarily like to think of itself as having functions. Like you'll notice, like as you're programming in PHP, that it comes somewhat naturally to not even use functions at all. And this is even for people who like are quite strongly into functions. Like anytime I'm grading an assignment and I notice anybody has put even a single function in that wasn't called for, I was like, presence of greatness. So modularity in PHP, it's not that it doesn't exist, it's that it's thinking along different lines. The original intention for PHP was that you have small scripts, little tiny things, all right? And you have a lot of them. That's the idea behind it. So PHP uses a concept of modularity called file level modularity. If you think about it, when you name your PHP script, login.php, logout.php, start.php, right? You are describing operations using the file name. Effectively, these file names are serving the same purpose as function names. Your incoming HTTP parameters, get parameters, post parameters, etc., these are your function arguments. They're not really function arguments, but they serve that purpose. More so and increasingly, given I'm teaching class. More so and increasing, what was that? Functions, yes, APIs. I was going to talk about APIs. So APIs are extremely, extremely, extremely important. Most of you who had me for JavaScript, like when we were talking about Ajax, I was talking quite a bit about like how Ajax and stuff like is API calls, and API calls are like 80% of internet traffic, maybe 90% of internet traffic now. So like super uber duper important, right? API calls. So that's the way that API calls think about get and post parameters as well as like function arguments, right? So, you know, it's not a bad analogy. But at any rate, when you write a PHP file, you're kind of writing, you should be writing a single operation, right? In theory. This is certainly the approach that's going to be taken in your first assignment, right? Shall we talk about the first assignment? Apropos of nothing. Apropos of the work I expect you to do. So, here we go. So, So this is kind of the basics, right? So please do not use the AI to generate your solutions. You can use it to like make a couple of suggestions, I guess, but like basically if you can't handle the stuff in assignment 1, you're gonna have a rough time with the rest of the course, so you should take the time now to learn how PHP works, right? So there is starter code. A thing that is true about this course, you will never at any point be required to write any client-side code. All HTML or JavaScript will be given to you, at least for the time being. I believe that this is a restriction that actually has to be in place because, funnily enough, JavaScript is not prerequisite for this course. So, like, Java is the prerequisite rather than JavaScript, so I can't actually, like, you know, I can have people in the room, for example, who, like, did not actually pass JavaScript and, you know, still teach them PHP, so I can't actually require you to write any JavaScript. So, yeah, anyway, you won't be required to write any JavaScript. All of the front-end code is given to you in the form of zip files. So, but you do have some questions. In this case, the front-end code is just like a web form that you click a button and it sends it to the PHP script using Ajax. So, question 1, marching ants. It is a well-known fact that ants only walk in straight lines. It is also a well-known fact that ant colonies go to war with each other. In this question, we will consider a field of battle expressed as a string and calculate from that which ant colony will emerge victorious. So, essentially, you're given a string that has some combination of R, B, and X. X means there's no ant in that space. Red ants and black ants otherwise. So, red ants always travel left. Black ants always travel right. If a black ant meets a red ant, they destroy each other. Right? So, for example, if I have red, 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 the reds are traveling left, right? Yeah, left. So the reds are traveling this way. Empty space, empty space, empty space. I have one black ant there, is traveling this way. The first two are going to eliminate each other. Then I have two that are left to make it to the black colony and destroy it. So red wins. Right? If I, you are given some test cases here, right? Basically, each one of these strings has one of 4 possible outcomes. Either red wins, black wins, neither colony wins. These are the cases where the number of ants on each side are equal to each other, or there are no ants at all. Or both colonies are destroyed. So a critical thing about the marching ants problem is that you can't just count up the number of ants on each side and say which one's greater than the other one, that's who wins. It depends positionally, right? So if I have, 3 black ants traveling this way, and 1 red ant traveling that way to oppose, ordinarily in this scenario, who wins? The black ants. But if I throw this little guy on the end of the string, who wins?
Red, which is the column.
Well, both red wins and black wins. Right? Both colonies are destroyed. Because I'm not interested in who is destroyed first. Just in the end, when all of the ants have reached their destination, has one red ant, at least one red ant made it to the black colony, has at least one black ant made it to the red colony. If those are both true, mutually assured destruction. Right? Does this make sense? So I hope you guys find this as a fun little problem. This is intended as fun, by the way. If you don't find this as fun, well, I don't know. Maybe I need to. This is my version of fun, but then again, you can consider the thing I do for an occupation, I guess. All right. Part 2, question 2, part 1. Factor a number. So, a factor of a number is another number which perfectly divides it. Hopefully everybody remembers this definition from mathematics, right? So, basically, your input will be some integer, and your output will be all of the factors of that number, which include, of course, 1 and itself. Hopefully, this seems reasonably simple. Yep. So, the one thing that people seem to forget about this one. I'm asking for an ordered list in the HTML sense. So like generate a HTML ordered list of all of the factors. Make sense? Cool. Question 2, part 2. Erdos-Woods numbers. So watch the video, because it explains the numerical sequence. So, basically, this is a description of what you're trying to calculate though. Given 2 numbers, start and end, via post request, return an unordered HTML list of all the numbers within the range between start and end, which are not factored by the factors of start and end, right? So, for example, let's take 2 numbers. Somebody give me a number that isn't prime, that's under 30.
20.
Somebody give me a number that's that isn't prime. Well, actually, this one can be prime. Someone give me a number between 1 and 10. 8. All right, 8 is a little simple, but that's okay. So, because it's 2 cubed, right? That's okay. So, what are the factors of 8?
1.
1 is the factor of everything, so we kind of exclude that from consideration, actually.
2.
2. Anything else?
4.
4. Anything else? 8. Yep. So, and of course, if you consider, like, if you want to talk about prime factors, you've only got 2, but don't worry about prime factors. Just use the output of the previous. Like, there's a reason. It's so fascinating. So, like, a lot of people like seem to forget that like part 2 had a part 1 where I actually asked you to do like part of this algorithm as part 1 and then the rest as part 2. People seem to forget that part 1 existed. But anyway, take these, right? What are the factors of 20? 10 is one of them, yeah. 20 as well. 2, 4, and 5. Are we missing any? Well, 1, yes. So, there you go. So if we were to take this and like produce a list of all of the factors of those two things sorted, it would be like 1, 2, 4, 5, 8, 10, 20. So you then iterate from 9 to 19, and if it's, let's see here, is it all of the ones that are or aren't? Not factored. So basically, if any of these, if a number in this sort of continuum is evenly divided by any of these numbers, you cross it off the list, right? So 9, is it divided evenly by any of these? No, so it's off the list. How about 10?
Yeah.
Yes. Wait, no, sorry, it's kept. Pardon me. 10 is crossed off because it is in this list. How about 11? 11 is a prime number, so it cannot possibly be the case. That's right. Unless this was like double a prime. That would, like if this were 22, then this one would be crossed off. Anyway, how about 12?
Yeah.
Yes. Factored by 4, for instance, and 2. 13.
Prime numbers are no.
That's fine. 14.
Factored by 2.
Factored by 2, so it's out. 15.
By 5, so no.
Factored by 5, so it's out. 16.
By 2, so no.
Out. Yeah, like you can see, you can just cross off all the even numbers, right? 17. Prime, you keep it. 18. Even, cross it out. 19. Prime, so you keep it. And then 20 is the final one. So our final list is actually all of the prime numbers between 8 and 20 plus 9. And that's it. That's the output. Does that make sense? Cool. And now that I've run through the algorithm, everybody will get 100% on the assignment, right? Alright. Let's talk about submission. Alright? It is not good enough that your work should work on your own computer. It must work on CS Unix. I have said this previously, but please, 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 please test your code on the server before considering your submission complete. In fact, testing it on the server is something you should do before you submit to Canvas, right? Because you might find bugs, fix those bugs, and then submit to Canvas, please. So, this means that the stuff that's in the starter code file also has to be, it has to be up and working. You can't just drop the zip file there, right? You can't just drop the zip file into your folder on CS Unix and have it work. I will tell you your submission is incorrect. Go fix it in 1 week or it's a 0. Otherwise, submission works pretty similarly to how it did in JavaScript. You will please submit all of your PHP source code files with the .txt file extension appended. Leave PHP in place, but put .txt on there. You do not need to submit your client-side code because you didn't even write it. I already have a copy of it. I wrote it. please, for the love of all that is holy, test your submission. So last semester we used the folder 10259/A1, A2, etc. This is a different course, therefore has a different course code. 10 to 60, A1, A2, A3, etc. Hopefully, everybody can manage their directories. All right, you guys have already been through a whole course of this, so everybody should do great, right? Everybody's confident that they can submit their assignments? Hopefully. All right. Okay. Any questions about the assignment? Except, with the exception of probably like when is the due date? That is always a good question. It's due September 28th, which is next weekend. So you got 2 weeks to work on it.
Also done the vacuum before scoring up against the other classes as well.
Yeah, I know that third semester is chock full, as they say. But yeah, just, so although we haven't done the I/O piece yet, you guys should be able to write these algorithms at this point, like hard coding values into variables for inputs, right? That should be perfectly possible. So you guys can get started working on it this very day if you wish. Okay? Sound good? I'm pretty sure in the starter code I give you like stub files that say this is where your code goes and stuff, so. Alright. Good. So, alright. Back to this. Alright. So PHP uses file level modularity. This means that the client, when it wishes to perform an operation, normally will invoke a PHP script. PHP scripts are also used by other PHP scripts in a manner which is a little bit unique compared to imports in other languages that you may have done. Now, it seems to me that in this program so far, you have used libraries by importing them. Most notably, like the scanner library in Java, which, like IntelliJ, even like auto-populates the import statement for you when it detects you're using a scanner. So perhaps it's not that impressive. You've used libraries, but you haven't really been required to import your own code into your own files, right? So this is kind of an introduction to that. In PHP, we have 4 different ways of importing PHP into PHP. You should be aware that every single one of these is an in-place insertion into the file. So if I have f.php and I have g.php, right? If I have some code and then include g.php and some more code, what it actually does is it actually takes the entire contents of g.php and expands that one line of code with it. So this is interesting because later on in the course, we're going to see how, if this is like, you know, if this is like a PHP sticker that has been hastily applied to an HTML file, you know, kind of like they put the French sticker on the back of some types of like food stuff in the grocery store, you know, it's like, oh, we got to be compliant with Canada. You put a sticker on the back. If it's that level of this being a PHP file, this is actually an HTML file. A thing that we're often going to do when we get to MVC architecture is select which HTML file we want to show using logic, right? The way that you do that is like, if error include error page dot PHP, conditionally including the contents of another file. This is a thing we're actually going to do, and this is actually going to be useful at the time that we do it, because the alternatives are even less pretty. Does that make sense? So that's really what it is. You're taking the content of one file and dumping it into another file. That's what you're doing. Most of the time you'll do that at the top of the file, because most of the time that you're doing this will just be function definitions, right? That's what a library is. It's a file full of function definitions that get dumped in at the top of the file. This is actually, believe it or not, the same way that C works. A C include statement works in the same way. It's actually a macro, that's why it starts with a hashtag. Octothorpe, right? In C, all macros begin with a octothorpe character. But in PHP, it's not a macro. It's like a first class member of the language. It's not pre-processed. It's not part of the preprocessor. It's part of the actual execution. So why do we have 4 of these? All right. Well, basically, it's, you know, what's it called? A Punnett square. You know, like when you're determining whether peas are like wrinkled or green and that sort of thing in like high school level biology, right? Basically, we have like really 2 options being encoded here that results in 4 different things. Basically, you've got the difference between include and require, and you've got the difference between include and include once. This difference between require and require once is the same as the difference between include and include once, right? So, the difference between include and require has to do whether or not there's an error that occurs in this file as it's being processed. If you are including the file, an error here does not break the PHP script. Under require, an error which breaks this script also breaks the parent script. So it's kind of like, it's another one of these situations where like, you have to ask very nicely to have the same level of safety as anybody, like any proper language, you know? Like, if you wanted to, like an analogy with like Java, right? If the Java definitions in the file you're loading fail to compile, do you think Java will let you continue any further? Definitely not, right? So require is really most similar to the behavior of other programming languages. Include is, once again, loosey-goosey dynamic typing stuff. Does that make sense? Now, okay, so what about once? That's a little more clear to understand. Under include or require once, a file once imported is marked down as having been imported, and any further attempts to import it will fail. It will say, no, I already have it, thank you. This is particularly useful because sometimes your files contain a bunch of function definitions, and it's very easy to get into a situation where you accidentally do this, you attempt to load the same definitions twice, in which case include will at best overwrite and at worst warn you and produce the god-awful PHP warning messages that show up in the middle of your HTML code. Right? Include once means that it will only be included once. One use case for this we will see when we talk about sessions. So there's a particular piece of code which is necessary to start a session. It's just a call to the function start session. But a session, like, you can't just keep calling it, right? But every PHP script must call that at the top of the file in order to have the session active for that PHP script. So, you're kind of in this conundrum. If you want that file to import other PHP scripts, but you want those PHP scripts to be able to run without being called by that other one, you need to have start session at the top of all of your files, whether or not they've been imported. But if you take that statement, encapsulate it in its own PHP file, and include it once, rather than including it every single time, then it will only start the session once, which is correct. We'll see when we get there. Make sense? Any questions? You've all been very quiet today, yes?
So, do you get an error, or does it just, you run out of memory if you somehow make the PHP files like include or require each other?
Ooh, circular references. You want to see if we can break CS Unix?
Does that mean we won't have to do the assignment that we do?
Maybe I shouldn't, because IT is on strike. Okay.
Well,
No, it's
we can do
XAMPP.
it.
It's XAMPP.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can break XAMPP. That's fine. All right. File, say, new. All right. Include no.php. This will be yes.php. Save. New. Echo. No. Include. Yes.php. Let's see if this works. There we go. There we go. That needs a semicolon. There we go. All right. Now let's see. It's still going.
That'll break right.
So, oh wow, I can't even grab that. There we go.
I guess we'll run out of memory yet. So.
The fan on this computer just turned on. I'm just gonna end the madness. There we go. Whoa. Wait. Wow. Okay. Actually, that might not have even stopped it.
Check the task manager. Check the task.
Stop the server! Alright. So, yes, that works. That is a good example of a situation that might be solved by including once. Absolutely. You know, I'm not saying that's gonna show up as a test question, but like, that's actually the type of thing that I like to put down for test questions. Yeah. Yeah, because it's like, you know, it's like, here's some code. It's obviously a circular reference. How could you fix it so it wasn't a circular reference? Include once. That's a test